Hello, today I am covering Model L, which is in my opinion the weirdest model in the Mega Man ZX series, and the one that got third place in the poll I made for the Model ZX video. Like in the Model P and Model H videos, whenever I talk about a move, the damage and combo values will be in the top right corner of the screen. You already know what I'm gonna say. I'll be talking about the basics and more complex things about this model. Here's the games I'm covering, so let's get into it. Model L is based on Leviathan from the Mega Man Zero series. Since the Model P video, she's become my third favorite Guardian in the series, but again, I think all of them are really cool. In Mega Man ZX, you get Model L by defeating Lurere, and further upgrading it by defeating Leg Anchor. In Advent, you get it by defeating Fetus. Model L has one weapon, which is the Halberd. Before we get to the attacks, I need to cover the general stuff. Model L has the Biometal Gauge. The Biometal Gauge dictates if you can use charge moves or not, as charge moves spend Biometal Gauge. In Mega Man ZX, you can also run out of Overdrive if you run out of Biometal Gauge. The Biometal Gauge cannot self-recover in Mega Man ZX, but it does in Advent, refilling by 1 point every 3 seconds. In Mega Man ZX, the lower level you get when beating a Pseudoroid, the less Biometal Gauge you get. Model L has a mechanic that is only in Mega Man ZX. The other Guardian models have this as well, and so does Model OX. This mechanic is the Overdrive, which is activated by tapping A. When it's activated, all of your attacks do double damage, and all of them inflict that model's respective element. Model L's is the Ice element. It being the Ice element is more important against enemies and bosses, so I'll cover the Ice element in that section. 1 point of the Biometal Gauge is depleted upon activation, and 1 point is depleted every second. Charged attacks do spend the Biometal Gauge as well. Model L has a few movement options. Before I get to them, all of these can only be used in the water, so their usage is limited. If you press B in the water, you will be in a float-like stasis. You will float until you press B again, switch models, or until you do something else. If you do something else though, the stasis will still be active. In Advent, you can use stasis, and the rest of the movement options in the waterfalls that are found in the waterfall ruins. Model L can swim once you are in stasis. You can freely swim in any direction as long as you want, however you want. As long as you're in the water, it's fair game. However, if the water stops in an open area, like here for example, you cannot swim past that. When you are swimming, you are able to water dash. You can dash in any of the 8 cardinal directions, and you can dash infinitely as long as there's water. The same limits that swimming has apply here. You can do this without swimming before dashing, and you will be automatically put in stasis. Finally, Model L has the item scanner on the bottom screen. This gives a map of the area you're in, even specifying where walls, spikes, and platforms are. There will be a Cyber Elf that follows your indicator on there, and it points out nearby items and pickups, revealing their location to you. It's essentially another radar scope, but unlike it, not only will the area it covers be wider, also, it will not point out enemies. It's pretty useful in darker areas, like parts of Area I and the Quarry. Starting with the attacks is the ground slash halberd. A wide slash with the halberd is performed, and for how the animation looks, you can use this again surprisingly fast. This is also the attack you will use if you attack while dashing on the ground. The next attack is the air slash halberd. Like the ground version, it's also pretty wide. This one especially, since it can even hit enemies below it. In ZX, this attack is slightly weaker than the ground slash halberd, but in Advent, they do the same amount of damage. It has the same damage and combo values as the wall slash. This move can only be used in the water, and if you are in stasis. This attack is the screw halberd. You will spin the halberd while slashing in a circle, and you can do this indefinitely if you keep pressing the attack button. Since you're in stasis, you will stay in place during this. This is the attack you will use if you attack while water dashing. This move is essentially a better version of Model ZX's rolling slash, since you won't be limited by airtime, but since you can only use this move in the water, it's more limited than Model ZX's rolling slash. It's overall worse than Model ZX's version, but that's still giving this move a lot of praise. Model L has 2 charged moves in Mega Man ZX. The first charged move is the Ice Platform, which is exclusive to this game. This move is performed by holding Y or R and then releasing it with no directional inputs. This creates a platform, which will disappear after some time. Up to 2 can be on screen at a time. If you try to create another one, the earliest one will disappear. The platform can do several things. You can stand on the platform, which gives you a little extra height, hit it with an attack, which will push it forward in the horizontal direction you used it in, and if it's underwater, it will rise until it disappears, gets to the end of the water, or until it hits a surface. It can also be used on top of spikes, and you can ride the platform on spikes for a bit, so that can be really funny. The platform will instantly break if it hits fire. This move depletes 2 points of the bimetal gauge. There's something else you can do with this move, but I'll cover that in the Complexities section. The next charged move is the Freezing Dragon. You also get it in ZX Advent as Gray. This move is performed by holding Y or R, holding up, and then releasing it. This move summons an ice dragon that will home in on enemies, although it doesn't have the speed or accuracy of Model H's electric ball. If there are no enemies in sight, it will move directly horizontally of the position you were facing. If you try to create another dragon, the earliest one that was created will disappear. This move depletes 4 points of the biometal gauge in both games. Moving on to the only Advent move here is the Ice Sticker, which you get as Ash. A spiked ice ball is created, which acts like the ice platform in the way that it stays still until it disappears, if you don't hit it. If you do hit it, it shatters into 4 ice shards, which spread out the further they travel. 2 go straight, 1 goes diagonally up, 1 goes diagonally down. Like the ice platform, it will rise up if it's underwater. This move depletes 4 points of the bimetal gauge. Gray has the better exclusive move overall, as the homing is great, and you don't need to attack it in order for it to work. Ash's isn't bad by any means, Gray's is just better than it. With the basics out of the way, let's move on to the Complexities. Like with Model ZX and Model H, you can do reversals. Reversals are using a saber, or a melee weapon equivalent, performing the attack, and quickly going left and right on the D-pad or joystick. Reversals can be hard to do at first, but get easier as you do them more. Reversals are good for getting more damage on enemies and mini-bosses, since they don't have invincibility frames. Reversals can be done with Model L, ZX, F, H, and OX. You can only do reversals with the air slash. This trick's hard for me to put into words, but in Mega Man ZX, you can use the ice platform to get a height boost equivalent or slightly less than a Model H air dash upward. To do this, have the ice platform ready of course, and jump by holding down B, and during the middle or early sections of the jump, release Y or R to make the platform. You should have created the platform, and you are standing on it in the air. Then do a jump after to get the aforementioned height boost. This is pretty useful for getting to areas you wouldn't be able to otherwise, and it helps getting through some sections of stages quicker. It's also very fun as well, which is my main reason why I like doing this so much. If you are Ash, you can activate Ice Sticker just before the apex of your jump, and then quickly attack again for the shards to spread out at a higher elevation. This doesn't do too much, but it can be useful sometimes. With the Complexities done, let's move on to the stages. In Mega Man ZX, Model L does pretty well in most stages. It's not the best overall, but it's still good in all of them. Model L is the best in stages or sections with water in them, since you can move freely, only being limited by the water and its stopping points. It's the best model in Area F, Area J, and the water section of Area M due to the aforementioned reason, as you get the best movement in the series, and you get to use more attacks. It's helpful in Area I thanks to the item scanner, allowing you to see the general map when you're in the dark area, although you can't see enemies. It's good in Area X and Area O due to it being good against the mini-bosses there, and Area L, since using the ice platform can help you get to higher areas. Speaking of that, it's incredibly helpful for either getting to an area you otherwise couldn't be able to get to, or just getting through a section quicker. It doesn't stand out in the rest of the stages, but it's not bad in any way. Overdrive can make almost every enemy a joke, since you'll kill them in 1 to 3 hits. Make sure you conserve your bimetal gauge though, because if you run out, not only do you lose out on your ranged options, making you have to attack directly, and overdrive, which decreases your damage, but you also lose out on the ice platform, which reduces your overall movement. It does have some unique interactions though. If you hit a mini satellite with an ice element move, they will be turned off longer than if you hit them with a no element move. I'll mention what happens with enemies in their section. In Advent, Model L is nowhere near as good here when comparing it to ZX, but it's still really good in some cases. Of course, it's one of, if not the best model in the water, due to the near infinite movement, and the attacks you can use are pretty good. Ironically enough though, in the stages with water, you'll get stuck in some of them, which are Arctic Ice Flow and Biolab. It's very useful in the highway, since not only are you intended to get it here, it's very useful throughout the stage. It's also pretty good in Arctic ice flow, because there's a lot of water, and you can get to certain spots you couldn't otherwise. Waterfall ruins, since it can use the many waterfalls that are around, mysterious lab, due to many enemies dying quickly, the range of the halberd, and reversals. It's useful enough in the core that I don't mind using it, due to the item scanner being able to give you a map, and Biolab, since the high damage of the air slash can kill these enemies before they become annoying. For every other stage, it's not too great, but it's good enough to where you can reasonably use it. I will say that Ouroboros is pretty annoying though, since you might break a red hazard that you're using as a platform, which can cause you to die. Model L is good in the stages of CX. It has some stages it can struggle at, but you can do well at all of them if you play right. It's a lot more mixed in Advent, as it's one of, if not the best model in some stages, while it's mediocre, or just straight up bad in others. With the stages done, let's move on to the enemies and bosses. In Mega Man ZX, Model L is pretty good against most enemies. Not only can they be killed really quickly with overdrive, you also have reversals, the charged moves, and the fact that ice moves can freeze most enemies, turning off their collision, letting you pass through them for a little bit of time. Some enemies don't die too easily to this model, but it shouldn't take too long regardless. It isn't as great in Advent due to losing overdrive, but with reversals and charged moves, you should be able to kill most enemies in a reasonable time. The buff the air slash halberd got as well helps a lot, as it does more damage. Against mini bosses in ZX, Model L varies, but it's generally decent. Against mini bosses in the air, or with several enemies you have to hit, overdrive reversals with the air slash are usually the way to go. For the other ones, use the ground slash. However, for the ones in water, pretty much anything can work, but I recommend the aforementioned options. The only bad mini-bosses are the Crush Pactors, as you won't get too much time to attack, and you have to be very careful. In Advent, the same things apply against most mini-bosses. For the Capsule Converter, the Ice Sticker and Air Slash could be super useful, since they can hit several of them at once. For the Lang Branch, the Air Slash is good for dealing with the tentacles, and the Screw Halberd is good for dealing with the core. None of the others are too bad, but the Giganto Bolt is a pain to fight. Moving on to bosses, here are the combo charts for Model L in Mega Man ZX and ZX Advent. Pause if you want to read. As mentioned earlier, Model L is a model of the ice element. The element system works like this. Ice is good against thunder, thunder is good against fire, fire is good against ice. There's nothing special with Null. All damage done stays the same. What this means is that any ice move will deal more damage to and stun thunder bosses. Their collision is turned off for some time, meaning you can pass through them without taking damage, which can open up new combos. Ice is neutral to itself and the Null element, although using overdrive in CX against the ice boss will not increase damage. Against fire bosses, they are immune to any ice moves, meaning that they take longer to beat. This makes Model L by far the worst model to use against fire bosses. For a fun fact, you can freeze the bombs Protectos uses. For the combo routes in ZX, it depends if there's water or not, but you'll generally do the same things. Freezing Dragon into Air Slash into Ground Slash is used pretty often, and for good reason. The dragon can home in on enemies, which not only can get enemies if you can't get them directly, but it can also freeze them if they are a thunder boss, which gives you a free setup into the air in Ground Slash. Against fire bosses, Air Slash into Ground Slash is the only option, as they aren't ice moves if you don't use overdrive. In the water, Model L gets buffed heavily, thanks to the free movement and access to the Screw Halberd. It can hit up to 127 times, which can solo a boss with free full health bars, if there is water to work with. Now for the ice platform, it's very weird, as you have to position it right. If you're gonna use it near the boss, while not hitting them with the air slash, while not hitting them with any other attack. You can also use the platform to help dodge attacks, thanks to the height boost, or use the boosted combo into the ground slash. I mostly use this on bosses that like to stay in the air for a while, like Pegasulta Eclair. While Model L's combo routes aren't complicated and not too crazy, if you're good enough, you can do some sick stuff. For Advent, overdrive is gone, you lose the ice platform, and half of your bimetal gauge. For the new stuff you can do, Ice Sticker works a lot like the ice platform, in the way that you have to position it right, as if you hit a boss with the air slash, the Ice Sticker will not hit. You can use the shards of the Ice Sticker for an easier time hitting them, and covering a good amount of space, but they do less damage than the Ice Sticker itself. Other than that though, the same stuff in ZX applies. Freezing Dragon or Ice Sticker into Air Slash into Ground Slash, and Screw Halberd after Air Slash if there is water to work with. If you can use the Screw Halberd, this model becomes one of, if not the best model against bosses. Against bosses in Mega Man ZX, Model L is pretty good against every boss that isn't a fire boss, and there's a lot of creative things you can do if you play right. In Advent, while it still heavily struggles against fire bosses, and it isn't as great generally, it still isn't too bad. And in Water, it's one of the best models there, with only Model CX as competition. It's very hard for me to describe how I feel about this model, but overall, I call it flawed as a massive part of its usefulness relies on water. Outside of the water, it's still good, but it can be a worser model in both games. I call it fun as I love using this model. It's awesome when used right, and the platform trick in ZX helps a lot. I never really thought of it as the most fun model in the game, but I do now. The next video in this series will be about Model F, which will be really fun to do, since not only is it a good model overall, it also uses fire, which is bonus points for me. My next video will be the Shovel Knight, Shovel of Hope boss ranking. I already have the script done, and I'm gonna try to get it out before Shovel of Hope DX comes out. You already know what I'm gonna say. I'll throw my money to that game like it's life or death. I'll see you all next time in the Shovel Knight, Shovel of Hope boss ranking.